meeting of the Senate Ad Hoc Committee on Ways and Means to officially kickstart the investigation process into the 30 trillion naira Ways and Means loan from the Central Bank of Nigeria under the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari.
In the 9 Senates, a total sum of about 23.5 trillion was brought before the Senate for the Senate to concur,
to approve,
or approve. It turned out that it wasn't just 23.5 trillion, that in reality we had reached about 27, almost 28 trillion. And then with interest, by the time the 10th Senate came, we were now saddled with the responsibility of looking at about 7 trillion. So when you look at the totality, we are talking about a total of about 30 trillion. And the Accountant General and the CBN Governor have failed to provide the details and see whether they were judiciously utilized and if there is any way that some monies are still remaining, then the Senate will recover it for the benefit of the Nigerian people and for the benefit of this administration.
At the convergence of the parties involved, the President of the Senate expects premium cooperation. He also charges the 17-member ad hoc committee to spare no one in its quest to uncover any missing detail.
You must leave no stone unturned in the pursuit of the truth. Therefore, conduct thorough inquiries and dig out information that will assist the Senate in making decisions on this matter and also making laws for the betterment of our dear country. The information and data you are going to gather for this investigation are very sensitive and must be handled with the utmost care and discretion until you submit your report. We must not see any aspect of the report in the media.
The ad hoc committee will interrogate the details of the Ways and Means disbursement, particularly the intervention programs such as the anchor borrowers programs, excess funding in the power sector, monies given to manufacturers, banks and airlines, which increase the current debt profile of the country.
We are going to carry out this assignment expeditiously, but without any form of compromise. I want to implore the parties, the beneficiaries of that program, that they should please make available to us relevant documents when we come asking for them. I equally want to employ them to make themselves available whenever we call them for interviews.
The Senate believes that the probe is fundamental to identify potential loopholes and ensure greater accountability in the CBN's development finance activities. The findings are expected to inform future policies aimed at promoting economic growth and mitigating financial risks. The committee has 6 weeks to turn in their report for legislative debate. Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
And that matter of the Ways and Means has remained a controversial conversation, generating a lot of back and forth in different quarters at the National Assembly and in the public space. But clarity around is also something that a lot of people talk about. What's the situation around the Ways and Means? What does it mean exactly? How does it impact on the Nigerians? You heard the Senate President talk about saving, doing this for the sake of Nigerians. Mokwe.
Indeed, he said it's, well, I think it is, this conversation has been on for a while as to whether or not the National Assembly was going to do the investigation. Recall when the National Assembly, particularly the Senate, started the conversation, and the first thing we got from, I think, was Senator Ali Ndume, who said, I was not there. Yeah. And then the former Senate President said, but you were there. I think a number of other senators said you were there, and he said, he insisted that I was not there, because looking at the figures we're looking at now, it does appear that, it's not the kind of thing that people want to be associated with. But the Senate has decided to go the whole hog in spite of the advice of the former Senate President that you might not find anything or it's going to be fruitless, so to speak. But they have decided that this is the path they want to choose. So we have a guest this morning to help, look look at whether or not fruit will come out of this. And we're very, very happy to welcome Dr. Onoha Nachi in Abuja studios this morning. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice having me.
Yes,
it's always a delight to be in your studio.
Thank you so much for coming. The last time you were here, I think you were talking with Nyota about the audited reports of the NNPC. And now we have another report, or we are about to have another investigation.
That will lead to another report.
Which will lead into another report. So we heard the Senate President there talking about how initially what was approved by the 9th National Assembly, or the 9th Senate more specifically, was 23 trillion naira in ways and means. We've since heard that that figure has gone up to as high as 28 trillion naira. And only recently we heard the CBN governor telling us about how another extra 10 trillion naira was also approved in interventions. And he said very specifically, I'm not even talking about the ways and means. So perhaps in total, maybe we're looking at almost 40 trillion naira here, approved in interventions by maybe the National Assembly was involved, and maybe some of it was just spending by the executive without appropriation. But this is what we're currently saying. What do you make of this move by the National Assembly?
Thank you, and once again, good morning, Nigerians. Ways and means is something that was created legally in the CBN Act. But the people that created that act clearly defined it properly. They defined it to the extent that if you're going to do that, you can't do more than 5% of the previous year budget. And also, if they don't remit that back to you, because it's a loan you're giving, CBN gives a loan to them, 5% of your last budget. And if they don't remit that back, you're not even supposed to approve the next budget for them. So this is what is contained in the Act, clearly defined properly. So if we look at what the last CBN did, that is the peak, the epitome, the vectors of recklessness. And first, you ask yourself, how does this ways and means comes to be? The institutions that are involved, who initiated, who approved, who sends? So that chain must be thoroughly understood. First, if there is deficiency in the fiscal system and the executive decide to run to the CBN that we have deficiency, that we can't do this project, that we can't pay this salary, this expenditure, can you help us out by way of ways and means? It means request is from here, from the presidency to the CBN. And the CBN now design it and say, yes, we can do it. Because the CBN still has the right. I remember during Soludo, there were several times it was requested. Soludo said, no, there are other options we can use. So the presidency right to the CBN requesting for this intervention. And the CBN will do the due diligence based on other parameters of the economy and says, if we do it, to not have this effect on inflation, to not have this general inflation and food inflation. They'll do all the analysis and say, okay, we can do to this extent. And then send back their owner this to the president. The presidency is supposed to send that to the National Assembly, which is where it is captured as an appropriation, as a budgeted expenditure. And in details, when you're sending it, you must put in details what you're going to use it to do. And I can say, from all the ways and means I've seen that happen through this period, there was never an attachment to it to National Assembly. This is what I've seen. So it's always the case, what even worse is that the relationship between the executive and the legislators, which is supposed to be a check and balance relationship, never existed. It was just a very two couples that loved the bed, which was made on top of Nigerian Naira, and they enjoyed it.
Yes, indeed. I remember that, conversation when the Senate started as to whether or not they were going to set up a committee to investigate this. The former Senate President, Ahmed Lawan, saying that, yes, we did the approval, but that they were supposed to have sent what they were going to use it for, shortly after. That was supposed to have accompanied it. We approved it with that condition. It never came, and they never raised any alarm. So do you think that it is right now that the 10th National Assembly is trying to investigate how the monies were spent?
There are several illegalities that are attached to the act they did. By law, the Senate was not supposed to approve it without having that attachment. So it's a clear violation. It's like you're approving a budget without the details of the budget attached to it. In finance, it can never be done. What are you approving? What are you approving? It's just like what Senator Ningi said, there are 3 trillion in the budget that has no items what they would do. So was it telling us that, okay, we did approve this without this attachment. So you are confessing that you violated the law, clearly. And even the CBN is also confessing that they also violated the law by not sticking to that 5% rule as contained in the Act. And when you break the law as it is in the Act, for me, it's a felony charge, it's a treasonable offense because it affects the entire economy. So you intentionally did it for whatever benefit it is. So the Senate going into it to do the investigation, what would they see? I think the most important thing is for us to be sure what exact amount was done on Ways and Means. So the numbers are not clear. They are not clear.
They're not clear, but sorry, Nyota, I'm still just trying to drive home whether you think that because I mean we've seen tons of investigations before by the National Assembly. At the end of the day, it ends up just being a recommendation. Even though I did hear a hint from the Senate President suggesting that whatever comes out of this might lead to a review of the laws. But so far, so good. It's not like as if we did not have the laws. It was that the laws were grossly violated in terms of how the approvals were given. So for you, when you look at this committee that has now been set up, do you think that this is an important committee to have and the time which will be spent investigating it will be worth it?
Yes, I would totally agree it's an important committee and the time that will be spent will worth it. But the most important part is who is going to do the investigation. The senators may not have the rifle skills to do that. Are they willing, ready to engage professionals that will work under them and get that done? Because if you allow the senators to go do it, it's still going to be another party transactions and it ends there. And this is what I expect from the investigation. 2 things are very clear that we don't know. 1, the amount that was generated by CBN through Ways and Means. 2, the detail of the spending. Because these Ways and Means is what we are suffering today. The demand and supply powers of the Naira was over-bloated and the supply. But let's even think of it. What about these, let's say the entire Ways and Means is 3 trillion and 20 trillion was siphoned illegally and used to purchase dollars in the open market. That alone has sucked out the dollars for commercial workers. So we are yet to get to the nitty-gritties. We are yet to cross all the T's and dot the I. If this investigation will answer that, it's a good one. So we'll just take it for that. But I expect the Senate to dip their hands and get professionals that will do the work because they don't have the forensic experts in themselves as senators. So they must get those forensic experts. So we'll trace it. Now, when you say Ways and Means also, remember, this is 1. After the final approval and CBN takes that, CBN return back to printing and minting. Who does that? So we need to see the memo that went from CBN to printing and minting. And we need to see the inventory from printing and minting back to CBN. So I'm not doing the work for them already, but there are certain details that...
These things you're asking to be seen, for me, one of the things you mentioned is the law's been violated.
Yeah.
And we keep talking about the fact that in Nigeria there doesn't seem to be a consequence for violation of laws, especially by those who are supposed to be the lawmakers themselves and seeing that the laws stand, as the case may be. So now the Senate has set up a committee that's to investigate the Ways and Means. So like, say, self-investigation. But you're saying they have to bring in experts. Would they bring in the right experts? When you say we need to see the memo that moved from the CBN to the executive or from the executive to the CBN, would that ever come out? At the end of the day, what will come out of these investigations? What are we likely to see? How would it affect the economy? Because that's where everything's headed to now. How would it affect the inflation rate? How would it affect the purchasing power of the Nigerian out there, according to the Senate President?
The effect of the Ways and Means is already obvious as it affects inflation, as it affects exchange rates within this period. And the current CBN is doing a very marvelous work. Thank God they listen to some of the things we say and they also know it and they're doing it. One of the approach which I expected them to do that they're doing is tighten up the cash ratios. And as of today, the last circular they gave out to the commercial banks restricting it up to 45%. So that 45%, it has already, yes, it's going to have some effect on the interest rate of borrowing, but it also reduces the cash in the circulations and tighten the movement of cash. But having said that, with that being done, you begin to see a recovery on the economy on a gradual process, because it's a case of demand and supply, what we have. But coming down to your question, unexpected output. If this investigation is fully approved and the Senate is sincere about themselves, yes, all the information will be given. This is one thing I love this country. Very, very, I love this country. When they want to do it right, they will do it right to the extreme. But when they decide to turn a blind eye, forget about it, nothing happens. So, but it is the leadership that determines this. Like I said, from the Senate, from the President, from this is a complete violation across.
So there were questions as to, what happens, excuse me, we do not know for how long this committee has been given. I didn't hear it come out in that, in the reporters put together what the time frame it is that they have to sit. But I did hear the Senate President say that, since what they're investigating is so sensitive, they do not want to hear one word from, the committee leaked to the media until the investigation is done, which some people will say, well, it's going to be a tight one because somehow the media will have their way. They have their ways of getting stuff, and I'm sure a lot of people will be inching to hear, what exactly transpired with the ways and means. But given that, given where we are, do you think it is really right that it's not an investigation being done in the open, at least for the sake of transparency? Because if we are all, the ways and means is a part of the current economic problems that we have all found ourselves in, don't we have a right to know and to follow the investigations as National Assembly is undertaking it?
I think Nigerians need to know. I totally agree with you on that. But when they know, becomes a different case, so that misinterpretation of the investigations won't be looked as witch hunting. One thing I want the Senate to pay focus on, now give them a time frame. What I say is let them get professionals. When you're licensed as a forensic audit, you're licensed for this and you're to do this. When you do those reports, I have been called to do a work for the federal government. When I finished the work, I handed it over to them and signed it. They went through it and said, oh, this is not what we expected. I said, okay, tell me what you expected. They gave me detail of what they expected. I did what they expected and gave to them. They flip it to the last page and they didn't see my name and my signature and stamp that they saw in the other one. They said, why did you sign it? I said, it's not my work, it's your work. This is me. This is the outcome of what my investigation says. But this is what you want. You can put your name and put everything. So when I push that they should get experts to do that, so that this expert can take holistic responsibility of the work, not the Senate, so that when they present it, you even will have a dissenting opinion who says, oh, so thing was not added, so thing was removed. That's when the debate comes up. But do Nigerians need to know? Yes. It's not an investigation that you call for public hearing. It's not an investigation that you gather peoples or not. It's a silent investigation from the date to date. Because first, the question is, when was the first request for such done? Once you pick up the date, you go back to the CBN. We need all your memos between now and so time to the presidency, reflecting this. And that archive must be made available. And it takes a lot to trace those things. And the letters are transpired in between. But the truth of the matter is that this singular act has caused the nation so much pain, both the rich and the poor. The middle class has been eroded by this, completely eroded by this. So we have to just get a solution to it. The CBN is doing much from the monetary policy, and the Minister of Finance is doing very well on the fiscal policies. But we just need to give them more time for their actions to meet, and we'll begin to see the resultant effect. But Nigerians need to know. So I will call the committee the attention that they should tell us at what point would they make the investigation open. And when you do investigations and produce the results, and your report, there are antecedent documents that lead to that. Can that be declared as an open document that can be seen?
Big questions, Aya.
One question that I would just want to find out from you is, how could this happen? We have laws, we have guidelines, we have the independence, supposed independence of the CBN. So it is not essentially supposed to be tied to the apron strings of the executive. How did this happen? What were, in your opinion, the gaps, the loops, the gaffes that were exploited for this to happen? And how do we make sure it doesn't happen again?
Okay, thank you, Aya. This happened for some obvious reason. In as much as this current government has repeated it, I've never been in that school of thought. One is having a commercial banker heading the CBN. I've never supported that. And there was no time a commercial banker headed the CBN that we have a very good economy running. So having a commercial banker who has been the MD of one bank or the other heading the CBN, we should, even when they review the CBN law, the qualification for CBN should also include that, for being a CBN governor should also include that. No former commercial bank MD or chief executive, ED, should head the CBN. Now, once you do that, it has no ties to all the banks. Because when you do ways and means, whatever you print, generally will still have to go to the commercial banks. And if the commercial banks are not willing to receive it and accommodate you, you don't have that relationship, you won't do it. But when you know already that the commercial bankers, the chief executives are your friends and colleagues, that you have worked together, have done several transactions together, it becomes easy to deal with. But the most important part is to prevent it from not happening. Can we amend the law strictly for us to know that, yes, any violation of this, because the law indicated it's a violation, but did not indicate the punishment for it. So we can go further to say, okay, if this happened by a CBN governor, minimum sentencing is 25 years or 50 years. Nobody will try about it again.
But Mr. Doha,
can put an end to it.
That's a good one to look at. However, we have oversight. We have the National Assembly, 2 tiers of the National Assembly, who are supposed to perform oversight. I don't think this 30 trillion naira thing happened within 1 month. I don't even think it happened within just one budget cycle. So, do you see any culpability of the legislature in this, whether consciously or unconsciously, by omission or by commission?
The truth is that the oversight functions are there, and the legislators are very, very vulnerable because some of them are fighting to meet their constituency demand and they need finance to do that. But at the same time, the last CBN had up to 3 different books that they were presenting whenever you approach them. They have the book they will present to the public, they have the book they present to the president, and they have the book that is a real book, which contains the details, and that was already shown in one of their reports. So probably, maybe when the senators or the House of Rep goes for oversight function, they will just present the book that suits them, the book that tells them we are doing well, the economy is this, that, and they present that book. And those people take it, review it, and say, okay, this is a report from them, this is their response, we are good and we are satisfied. Whereas their real balance sheet is in trouble. And let me put it to you right now. Even as we speak today, the commercial banks are doing the same thing. They have 2 technology background where they operate from. This is what the CBN was doing at that point in time. So we should approach this properly.
Now, it is what it is.
Yes.
We are where we are. And as you say, we need to approach this properly. If in doing that properly, and in the next few seconds, what would be the advice? How do we go about it to see the result that needs to be seen?
Okay, one is the team, the Senate committee members that are doing the investigation. I will encourage them to engage professionals. 2, that professional should be able to do a thorough work. And there are three things I will ask them to show us in that report. Who requested, who approved, and who released, and to who was it released. If these three questions can be answered, I said that is the first phase of it. The second phase of it is when the Senate wants to amend the law, there should be severe punishment for such violation. If the punishment is not threatening, anybody can do it. There are so many Nigerians, if you tell them to take 1 billion naira and go to jail for 10 years, they will just collect it, put it in the bank and go to that jail, standing. They don't need a bed for the 10 years they will come out because they have that resources waiting for them. So there's nothing threatening the CBN governor so they can violate it. So for now, that law, the CBN Act, should be amended in such a way that violation must be serious and in such a way that no commercial banker is the root of this cause. No commercial banker should be allowed to head the central bank. It's not like we don't have other people. Because once they head it, it's easier for the commercial banks to do all kind of nonsense with that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Onohanachi, the managing partner, DPH Investments, financial expert and public policy analyst. Thank you for coming in this morning.
Thank you.
And we want to say thank you to our guests, to our viewers, for letting us be a part of your morning and all the feedback, your messages, tweets, and mails. We want to say thank you. We do appreciate them, but we'll have to say bye.
Well, it's been a wonderful Tuesday morning with you. We certainly hope that you have a great day ahead and a productive rest of the week. Thank you for watching. I'm Maope Ogunyese.
And I'm Aya Makide. Goodbye for now.